Welcome. We're recording this session. Okay, and I'm also going to record to the cloud.
Yay.
Oh, you're recording it. Okay, so
Yeah, I'm
let's,
recording from this end.
yes, okay. Yeah, so it's recording to mine too then. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center, and we're so happy to be presenting Sacred Treks on Spain's Camino de Santiago and Japan's Shikoku Pilgrimage with artist Rachel Ann Cross. We're so happy to have Rachel here, such a wonderful artist, but she's also an avid traveler with many stories to tell. So you're in for a treat. Before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a few things that we have coming up. We're back on the plaza for Twilight Tuesdays. Every Tuesday we have events there. And this coming Tuesday is Afro-Latin dance, 7 to 9 p.m. And there's teachers there too to help teach you the moves. So come out to Veterans Plaza. Actually, they start at 6:30 with the lessons. So come on out. And Wednesday evening at the Civic Building, but inside we have Jewish Voices Through Poetry as we celebrate Jewish American Heritage Month this May, in addition to API Month, Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And so for that, on Thursday, we have an event at El Golfo. We have Ukulele Hui Under the Stars on El Golfo's patio. So come out to El Golfo and enjoy some Hawaiian music and dance. And don't forget your Hawaiian shirt and a lei or whatever you would like to wear to get into the aloha spirit with us. And we have our Silver Spring Blues Festival coming up. It's our 15th year, and it's taking place on June 15th, Father's Day Saturday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at downtown Silver Spring. And we have an exciting lineup, including Deanna Bogart, the Nighthawks, and many others. So come on out for that. And we are also celebrating Silver Spring Blues Week, June 9th through 15th with events daily. And so I hope you can join us. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Montgomery College, Maryland State Arts, and many others. And now we'll get started with the program. Rachel
Yay.
Ann Cross is a DC area artist, musician, and arts educator who first began her sacred trekking experience in 2017 on the Camino de Santiago in Spain. She has since completed the 500-mile Camino twice and half of the Shikoku Buddhist Pilgrimage in Japan. These amazing treks influence her artwork and spiritual practice on a daily basis. Rachel, sorry, just lost my spot. Rachel is an artist, musician. Let's see, on a daily basis. Where did I leave off? She's okay. Sorry, I'm losing my spot here. Okay, when I'm recording and it's doing that. Okay. She's been working in the DC area for over 25 years. Her vibrant artistic vision and sense of social justice are heavily informed by her early childhood in Los Angeles, my fellow Southern Californian. Rachel is an adamant hiker and nature lover. These themes feature prominently in her artwork, and Rachel's artwork continues to be exhibited in galleries, private collections, homes, and office spaces throughout the United States, Europe, and Australia. Rachel holds a BFA in Fine Arts from the Corcoran School of Art. Additionally, she studied in New York and Paris through Parsons School of Design. Rachel is currently an artist in residence for the City of Greenbelt, Maryland, and is a resident of Takoma Park, Maryland. You can see more of her artwork at planetrachel.com. Give it up
Wow.
for Rachel.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rachel. Take
Thank
it
you so
away.
much. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me. We've tried to make this happen for probably a year or so. So I'm thrilled to get to talk about some of these amazing experiences. First of all, I want to say it's honor and privilege to share everything that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. There will also be times to ask questions and comment and all of that. So I hope that you will feel empowered to do so. So doing something like a 500-mile hike is, for me, like, was very scary. So if you think about it and you get scared, that's a normal reaction. Doing something like that for sure. And also it takes some planning. So I'm a self-employed person, so planning for a year, especially with the first one, getting my family acclimated to the idea that I am this person going on my own, a woman going on my own to hike in a foreign country. That being said, I encourage everybody to do it. So I would like to share a PowerPoint with you that talks about both of my hikes and kind of how they're similar and how they're different. And please, write down questions because I would love to answer those for you. And let's see, let me see if I can get my screen share thing going on. Make that bigger. There we go. Okay. And it's so cool having all of these, a lot of folks I know, and then other folks as well. I think this is the right one. Let's find out. Can you all see that? Can you see the PowerPoint? Put a thumb up if you can, because most of you are on mute. Yay! Okay. So, sacred treks. Why am I calling this sacred treks and not just Rachel's going hiking for a month? It's sacred treks because historically, these hikes or these walks have a spiritual meaning or a spiritual reason for a lot of people. So I'll get into that a little bit as well. But I think if you go on a 500-mile hike, there's going to be some communing with something for sure, if you're outside for all of that. Okay, so sacred treks, the Camino de Santiago starts, or the route that I did started in France. It goes through a big section of Spain, and the Shikoku is on the island of Shikoku in Japan. Let's see if I can get our next slide up here. No, let me try this one. Figure out how to do this thing. Let's see. Oh, yay. Okay, can people see that? There we go. Okay, so hopefully you can see this image. I'm going to move my little people out of the way here so I can see it. There we go. Okay, so Santiago was one of the disciples of Jesus. This is the story, depending on what your belief system is. And he is enshrined, or his remnants are in a place called Santiago de Compostela in Spain. And during medieval times, this became a religious pilgrimage route. And people walked from all over Europe to this site. And you can see the statue here, and he's decked out with all kinds of lovely, the staff and the robe, and he doesn't look like a modern human being in this slide. Okay, so a lot earlier than that, there was another human being on planet Earth, Kobadaishi, in Japan, and he did a pilgrimage route around the whole island of Shikoku in Japan. And the places where he stayed and the people that he met, there are lots of temples that were erected in his honor. There are 88 temples. So on this pilgrimage, you walk from one temple to the next. And just a little comparison here. Let me see if I can get this to do this. Go back here. Here we go. Okay, so check out what he's got. He's got his hat. He's got his staff. He has a bowl of something, right? A bowl to put nourishment in. Okay, and then look at Santiago over here, right? He's got staff. He's got a gourd to put his food in. He's got the robe. He's got, beads. So it's a lot of similarities that these two beings walked the earth at very different times. Let me go to the next. Okay, so the most popular route of the Camino de Santiago is the one that I did, and it starts on the French side of the Pyrenees, and you need a good Pyrenees to cross those. I had to make that joke, sorry. And it's 500 miles, and you can see all these little markers here are towns you can stop in. There are lots of cathedrals, lots of other interesting things, just being outside and experiencing the weather, the countryside, the animals, everything is quite an experience. So at 500 miles, it takes a month or more, depending on how fast you walk, how far you want to walk, and all of that. This one, let me go to our next. If I can go to my next slide here. Come on. Oh, come on. Should be letting me go to the next one. Not sure why it's not. There we go. Okay. So the Shikoku pilgrimage is a little bit longer, and it is a lot more difficult. It's not as well marked. You're in more rural areas, but it is also quite the adventure. And you can see you're really going around the entire island. And sometimes you're inland a little bit, going through mountains and forests and rice paddy areas, and sometimes you're on the coast, and you can see lots of, there are cities, there are different distances. Tokushima is a pretty famous city that a lot of folks try to get there before they start their pilgrimage. Okay, so where do you stay, right? You're hiking, you got your backpack. So it's kind of different, and there are different ways to do it. Some people do what I call rock star Camino, which is you're staying, if there is a nice hotel, you're staying in that. And some people can also have their backpacks transported. That doesn't allow for very much spontaneity because you have to know where you're staying the next night. So for me, I liked carrying everything with me. And I stayed mostly in the first two things on here. So albergue is like a municipal dorm. So people from all over the world stay there. It's very communal. It's very, bring your earplugs. There's lots of snoring, but there's also lots of fabulous people. They have kitchens. You can cook together. And they really differ in the quality. And sometimes there's cold water. Sometimes there's warm water. So big variety. And here's a little one, another kind of view of a different kind of a bunk bed. They're mostly bunk beds. I think they want to have as many people in one spot as possible. So if you're doing Camino de Santiago, you will stay probably in something like this. And your personal space is something you need to create on your own. Okay, so Japan is the Shikoku is a very different thing. There are lots of different choices for housing in the evenings, and one of them is camping. And I had a little 2-pound tent and met other people who were camping, and that was great because you can camp near a public bath, which means you can go in and soak up to your neck in hot water after hiking 20 miles, and then you sleep like a log. Or you get used to sleeping on the floor. They have these little futons that unroll. So it's very kind of Spartan, but very comfortable and very clean. So this would be a ryokan, which is a small inn. And the one next to it is camping. Also, a lot of temples have accommodations. And while I was there, I found out a wonderful thing called Henro House. And that is people have opened their homes, and there's kind of an underground network. You can stay with families. They'll cook for you. It's just incredible. So I did some stays at Henro houses as well, or Henro homes. Okay, so one thing that's very unique to both of these experiences is that you end up walking at the same pace as certain people. You end up staying at the same places. You end up preparing meals together with the same people. So it's a communal traveling family. And historically, big groups of people who are moving together are not doing it for pleasant reasons. It's not by choice, right? A lot of times they have to leave for some reason. Actually, a lot of people have had to do that if they look back in history. So this, to be intentional, part of an intentional traveling worldwide family, is an incredible experience. And very interesting things happen, like while in Spain on the Camino, meeting people from the Shikoku from Japan, people who are advertising to come and hike in Japan while they are hiking the Camino. So there are groups of people who really like doing these. I'm not the only one, obviously, right? You meet folks from all over the world. Okay, and some of the folks I met in Japan. In Japan, it is mostly Japanese people doing the pilgrimage. So the few Westerners that there were, we kind of got to know each other and recognize each other. So how do you not get lost? Well, actually, you do get lost a lot when you're on these, even though there's clear signage, there's construction or it rains or you miss something. But part of the challenge and part of the adventure is learning how to ask for directions. And I chose to be unplugged during the day because I wanted to have little guidebooks and things that I used instead. So getting lost, even with a guidebook, happens. So again, part of the adventure. So in Spain, there are these, you'll see these arrows, and this is a sign for Shell. That's everywhere. And then even in the streets, when you go through a city, they've got these little arrows. So if you look around, you usually do find your way. And in Japan, there's all different. Some of them are handwritten. Also, I didn't put a picture of that, but there's very different ways. But I like the one that says go this way. This is kind of with the big, hand pointing. So yes, I got lost every day, but that was part of the adventure. So after walking 500 miles, 750 miles, however far you're going to go, and on the Camino, you can go the last 100 kilometers and still get your credential. But what's really fun is that each place you go to, each town, each cathedral, they have a special stamp. And each one is very different. It has the name of the town, and it has a date. And then at the end, you get this official stamp when you get to Santiago. So it's becomes a little bit like a game, but also you have this wonderful moment. You have this wonderful souvenir of your experience, and to look back and see all these designs. And if you go into a bar, they'll have a stamp. So it's quite a thing. I had to get 2 of these Camino passport books because I filled up the first one. So it's a kind of a different thing in Japan. Similar concept, but you get a beautiful book that has a rendering already in it of each of the 88 temples that you visit. And while at the temple, there's a monk or a nun or a volunteer who will write in calligraphy the name of that Buddhist temple, and also they have official stamps where they do the chop block. So that is quite a beautiful thing. It's also kind of heavy, but it's worth carrying the miles. So move this down a little bit. So doing all these, being an artist and doing these pilgrimages. Whoops, let me go back to the other one. I wanted to be someone who was just taking in all the experiences. So not sitting there and hiking, sorry, sketching at the end of the day, but I took photos if something caught my attention. And there were certain animals, certain creatures, certain, even your own gear. Like if you have a good pair of boots, that becomes a holy relic when you're done. If you don't have a good pair of boots, then, you know, it's challenging. But all of these, you know, in Spain, it was very wet at the beginning. There were a lot of snails. That little painting of a goat is from Japan. I call it goat looking up because there was a goat looking up. So all of these have meaning, and they were inspired by photos I took during my hikes. And that was for the first 2 hikes. I was really focusing on, you know, the sacred in the everyday, and I used gold leaf on all of these little paintings in both, you know, in the cathedrals as well as in the Buddhist temples. There's lots of gold, and things that are really honored, they use gold. So I thought I would give the same honor to the encounters I had and my experiences. There's a couple more. Lots of cats in Spain, and those are 2 of my friends who are faster walkers, so they were usually in front of me in Japan. And you'll notice there's a certain kind of hat and a certain kind of vest, and I'll show you some of those things after the PowerPoint. Okay, so this latest Camino, which I did last spring. Actually, I was still on it during this time last year. I was more inspired by the weather and the natural phenomenon that were happening, and the flora, the fauna, and just the experience of being outside for most of the day. You know, you're not in a vehicle, you get to a town, you're still outside. You have to walk somewhere to get your food. You have to, you know, you walk around, you're outside. So I was thinking about rain, and we're kind of taught that it's a bad thing, but I think it's a really beautiful thing. So I started making these rain clouds. My artwork, it uses 80% repurposed materials, and that's also my way of honoring the earth. Here are a few more. There's a tree of the ancestors, and I had a public art project for the City of Wheaton recently, and that's about water, that pyramid. Lots of water on these walks, especially Shikoku, because you're on an island. So pretty much you get to the edge, there's water. Okay, so arigato, gracias. That ends my PowerPoint. Let me see if I can figure out how to get out of the PowerPoint. And I would love to show you some other things and also open up for questions. Okay, and I'm not sure, how will we do?
Did you want to do the videos first, or did you want to
Yeah, I think I'll take a few questions and then
take questions? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
people or
great.
comments.
Yeah, someone asked in the chat, John, did you want to ask your question to Rachel?
Or if you want to read it, I will respond.
Or I can read it.
Okay.
It's he just asks, how long did each trip take?
Okay. So the Caminos were a little over a month. I gave myself a little bit over, maybe 5 weeks or a month and 4 days. And I could have taken 6 or 8 weeks even, and really taken my time. And the Shikoku, it was more difficult, and I did half because I slipped in the woods and broke my wrist. I had to come home during that, but that was still a month even to do half of it. It was very mountainous, but really beautiful, really worth it, and I hope to go back. So
wow! So you're going to go back and finish?
Yeah, at some point. You know, I have my book here, and it's only. Well, let me see if I can show you a little bit.
Oh,
This
yeah.
Yes.
Really cool.
Really cool. And but it's, you know, it's only half full. So there we go. Oh, here's a good question. How many hours each day did you walk on average? Okay, this is a great question. In the guidebooks for both of these treks, there's suggested amounts to walk every day, and it's usually something like 15 to 20 miles. But some days I would go longer because I wanted to be closer the next day to a place that I might want to explore. And some days just wanted to go for it. But an average about 15 miles a day. I think there was a chat that came up. How did I train? Okay, if you're in the Silver Spring area, I would walk to Brookside Gardens on Sligo Creek Trail from my house and back. That's 16 miles. Can also drive to so many beautiful places like Great Falls, the C&O Canal. So I started with maybe 10-mile walks, then they got longer, and then I started walking with my pack. If you're gonna carry everything you need, you wanna make sure when it rains, is your rain gear great? Are your boots, do they work? What about your socks? All of these things. So doing the training walks, not everybody does them, but I would recommend it. And it kind of funny, at the beginning, friends would go with me on the training walks, and as soon as they would get longer than 10 miles, they said, you're on your own. Girl, you're on your own. Okay, another question was, I think, how long did I train for, or when did I start training? Okay, good question. I would say probably half a year before I went. Just whenever I had free time or whenever I had space in my schedule, I would start the walks. And then as it got closer to the time to do the treks, I would do like 2 15-mile walks in a row. So maybe one on Saturday and one on Sunday, so that I was conditioned to walk that far and not have recovery time in between. Great question. And there was another question, I think, but I didn't see.
Well,
Liz.
before we get into what did you
Yes.
take exactly?
Oh,
Can
that's a
you
whole.
is the next one, but before that, can you
Yes.
tell us more about how you prepared for the blisters and how you dealt with blisters?
That's a really good question. So there's specific stuff that I did, like breaking in my shoes or boots, getting them a half size bigger than what I normally wear because your foot's going to swell. So that really helps. I also use trekking poles. They take up to 25% of your weight when you're walking. So those of us with hips and knees, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have. If you've got hips and knees and you're going to do a long walk, I recommend those. So yeah, trying different socks. There were some really knowledgeable folks at REI, and also a local person who mentored me was just awesome. So he really helped kind of guide me through. But he also said, well, you'll figure it out. And guess what? They have stores in Spain. So you can actually, and in Japan. So if you really need something, you might be able to find it there. A good question. Other questions before?
Yeah, there are a couple new ones in the
Okay,
chat.
great.
So what exactly did you take?
Okay, 2 sets of clothes.
Only
Two.
two.
2 sets of clothes and a couple, like a good rain gear. And, it's not about fashion. It's about what's going to endure and what is going to be comfortable. And you dress in layers. So instead of bringing a coat, parts were very cold, you just put on all your clothes before you go. So, you've got your pants, and you've got a base layer, a short sleeve shirt, maybe a very thin fleece, and then your rain jacket. And you are warm and insulated. And also you're moving. And I had a 15-pound backpack. So when you're moving, you are warm also because you're walking. Someone asked how heavy was the pack. Yeah, about 15 pounds with the water and the food. And I shed some of the things I brought with me on the way. Because I thought
Rachel, in terms of what you took, did you Did you take any other shoes like sneakers and maybe flip-flops for the showers?
That's a really good question. And I took a pair of hiking sandals.
Oh, okay.
And the reason is if for some reason my boots got messed up, I could still walk around and probably hike in those. And they also really, you get to places at the end of the day and you're going to walk around and you want to take your boots off. So you have another
Yeah.
option of something to put on your feet. So yeah,
Mhm.
those were the two things: hiking boots, hiking sandals.
Do most people only bring two clothing, two outfits?
Well, it's recommended, and I would recommend it. Some people bring more, but then you're going to have to carry more.
Right.
So for me, as long as I had clothing that was well made, that was going to serve me, layers, things like like one of those shirts that repels the sun, like SPF 50 shirt is great. So you don't have to slather up every day and it covers you. Big hats, things like that. They're just, those are the priceless things, not bringing a lot of clothing. The
Right.
things that work.
And
Sorry
what
about
kind
that.
of research, Sue asks what were the guidebooks you used and what other research? How did you inform
Ah,
yourself to
okay.
prepare?
So many years ago, I think I saw that film The Way and I cried through the whole thing. And it's not the religion I was raised in or anything, but I felt called to do this, right? So that was kind of stepped in. And then a friend of mine who is just a wonderful person, local person who's a massage therapist and a doula, she said, maybe you should do that walk. She really encouraged me. And I started reading some books about it and some firsthand experiences, some mystical kind of interpretations of what the Camino de Santiago is. And that's it. Then I just said, okay, I'm going to make a commitment. And I carved out the time, 6 weeks to be away, or 5 weeks to be away. And I needed a year to convince my family that I would be fine doing it. And that was okay to go by myself.
Right. So did you mention guidebooks? Which guidebooks you
Yeah,
recommend?
so I brought my Kindle. That was my luxury item, is that I brought like the smallest Kindle made for human beings, but it's still bigger than my phone. So I had some information on that book, but also this is just a little Michelin guide to the Camino. And it is full of, so I can show you if you're able to see that. It gives you the distances and the elevation between towns. Now, a town could be 3 houses and a farm, or it could be a city. So yeah, there's a big variety. So this book, it's small, it fits in the side of the backpack. This was great for the Camino, this Michelin guide to Santiago. And for the Shikoku, this was priceless. This is 88 route guide. And it has places to stay. It's got phrases in Japanese. It goes over customs and rituals and there were a lot more rituals on the on the Shikoku, which were kind of fun to
Can you
do.
tell us a little about a ritual that you encountered?
Yes. So um, let me show you. So one of the things that the pilgrims do is they wear this white, I'm showing you the back of it. They wear this white vest, and a lot of them wear a conical shaped hat as well. But this shows that you are a pilgrim, that you are a henro. So you are recognized as that. So this vest goes over whatever smelly other clothes you're wearing. Um, and then a wooden staff is also with the name of Kobodaishi and some prayers usually incised into the side of it. The lovely little cover. So those are things that you wear. And when you get to a temple, the first thing you do is you wash your hands, usually a ladle or something. You wash out your mouth. You ring a bell. There's some kind of bell. You light incense and you say some prayers, and one of the prayers is the Heart Sutra, so for opening the heart. So I did all those things, and those are not things that I normally ever did before. But the ritual of it was really kind of comforting, is what I can say. The ritual of taking the time to do a spiritual practice, think about people at home. You can say prayers for people, think about ancestors, think about the people who have supported you so that you were able to do something like the Shikoku. So that was really, really interesting, just to be immersed in that culture.
Right. Okay. Well, and I was hoping you would tell us about the meditative experience, since you're touching on that. How is it, how would you compare it, the two experiences, meditative wise?
Well, there's something really amazing about getting up while the sun is rising, or even before the sun is rising every day, and experiencing the birth of the day and being outside for it. And then just starting your walk and having a very simple agenda compared to the rest of your life. So to intentionally choose, even like what you do every day, is it becomes a ritual. Okay, I'm going to get up at 6. I'm going to walk for 2 hours, and then there'll be some place where I can, in Spain, get a cup of coffee, and then I can talk to people after the coffee. And then when you get to your destination, okay, the set of clothes you were wearing, you hand wash it, you hang it to dry. You find some place that is open, for me, like a little bodega, and I get some ingredients, and maybe I met a friend who has got some other ingredients, and you make your meal. So that in itself, breaking bread with people, taking care of basic needs, is a huge part of the ritual. And walking quietly was incredible, and more so in Japan because there were less people. But walking quietly and just experiencing and being present, having the time to think. And when you're walking, you're in a rhythm, so something is also happening there. And when you're in a wooded area, you're getting a lot more oxygen. So on a molecular level, your body is also changing. And you're doing aerobic exercise for maybe 5 to 8 hours a day. You're moving, just an incredible thing.
So it took you about 5 to 8 hours to walk that average of 15 miles a day?
Yeah, there'd be stops, to eat, and or if something was interesting, or if there was a stream that I wanted to stick my feet in, or some cows I wanted to pet, or whatever it was. Yeah, so then that allowed for wiggle room. But by early, if you leave at 6 in the morning, by early afternoon, you're at your destination, and you have the rest of the time to explore. And most folks go to bed early, which was really nice too. Different than home.
I imagine the Camino is more social compared to the Japan walk.
It is, but that's also by choice, so culturally, a lot of the things close down in the afternoon and people eat later at night, like 8 or 9 at night. So for me, that schedule I couldn't do that every night. So I usually walked with friends who were into making a meal together earlier in the day, or earlier in the afternoon or evening. I go to bed early, and that worked for me. Getting up at 6, you want to go to bed at a decent hour.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, but there were a lot of pubs, and people did take advantage, and it was fun.
Right. And Kim asks, were there any concerns or issues being a woman and going by yourself?
That's a great question. The first time I went, I was a little nervous about it. And I was thinking historically about it. And I was thrilled to know that so many women were walking, because throughout history, there are not that I know of, there are not women saints who have done massive pilgrimages in the past because it wasn't safe for a woman to go by herself. That doesn't mean the women didn't do plenty of walking because the women were the healers and the midwives and they were walking around. But if they had to travel any kind of long distance by themselves, maybe they were dressed as a man, or they traveled with other people, or they traveled by cover of night. So it wasn't safe for them. But on this, I felt completely safe. And in Japan, because there were not very many Westerners, people would literally see me coming and they were ready to help. So it felt incredibly safe both times. I will add that in Japan there is a custom called osatai, which means it is a blessing to help the pilgrims or help the henros. So people would come out and bring me food while I was hiking, or a soft drink, or I still have bookmarks that a couple who had a little farm, they waited in the rain for pilgrims to pass, and they ran out and gave me these little bookmarks. So they gave me these gifts, and it's a blessing for them to help people who are making this trek. So I loved that, and that made me feel safe, and it made me feel seen also. Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fortunately, we live in a day and age where it's safer. I backpacked through Europe twice by myself for 3 months in my late 20s. Yeah. So, but yeah, there are some dangers, but I think it seems like you have a lot of people of like mind along the way that would look after you too, right?
Yeah, you get to know people, and then people are used to people walking these routes. There was a really good question from Jan Shaw
Right.
about what was kind of the catalyst for these walks, and every time it was different. So the first one was when I was turning 54, and I thought, okay, I'm putting my toe into the middle of my life, and there's no societal ritual for that that time of life. There's no formal rite of passage. So I'm going to make my own. And I called it a walk for inspiration because as people who are creating all the time, we don't have we have an unlimited imagination, I think, but we need that needs to be fed. So that was kind of my focus. Other things, of course, come in when you get there, things you didn't know about. So that was number one. First Camino. The Shikoku was kind of, okay, I did the Camino. I heard about this thing in Japan, and I really want to really go to a world that's very different and someplace I've never been. I'd never been to Asia and never been, to Japan or anything. So just to put myself in a very different cultural experience and be inspired by that. And I was, and challenged. And the last one, when I returned to the Camino last year was I turned 60. And again, feeling like, okay, this is time for another rite of passage. And as an artist, to experience the world. And also after being shut down and locked down during the pandemic, I felt like we really needed to celebrate being together and being human beings and experiencing the world, and also to be a representative of myself, my family, my city, my state, my country, and hopefully be a positive representative of all of all that this area has to offer. It's people, after all that, after our, not to get too political, but we didn't have that many fans overseas. and coming from out of a very divisive and isolating situation to be an advocate and to be a representative of your country and your culture was a great privilege.
Right. What years were these that you went?
2017 was the Camino. 2019 was the Shikoku, and then 2023 was the second Camino.
Great. Okay. And someone asked what time of year was it?
Ah, okay. Spring. Both, yeah, all of these spring. Early spring is my favorite time to go. It's not as hot. There are not as many people. It rains. Yes, there is weather, but it's just I like things coming to life.
Great. Okay. Um, so John mentions he walked in the 90s, he walked sections of the Camino Frances with Spanish friends
Yes.
and biked the Camino from Roncesvalles
Ransava, yeah,
to
Ransava.
Burgos. Yeah. And then in '07, he and his wife walked from Roncesvalles to Santiago for their honeymoon,
Oh, that's
then
fun.
drove out to Finisterre. Um, Unforgettable experiences. He hopes to do it again in a year or two. Um, and getting back to the spiritual side, Andy is asking, there's a spiritual walk in the north of Italy. Do you know anything about that?
No, but I would love to. My email is helloplanetrachel@gmail.com. So if you have a link, send me a link. I'm happy to
And
do
then,
that.
Jan, do you want to ask your question? Would you like to ask? You're muted, but
Hi, you talking about an earlier question?
yeah, about the spiritual awareness.
Yeah, Rich, I guess I'm just really curious because I have one of your beautiful pieces, of course, you know this.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just wondering what really propelled you. I'm 61 now, so you and I met, we were in our 30s. It's
Yeah.
just sort of at this stage, what propels you to be that brave? And now, for some other people may not think about that, but you get a little bit older. It's not like you're going to fall apart, but it is a bit of a challenge because we don't have all of the vitality in terms of our limbs that we have. So, but we also at this stage where we can dig a little bit deeper to who we are. So what was the catalyst for that? And then what did you learn about yourself in the process?
So intentionally putting myself in an uncomfortable situation to learn is what I decided I wanted to do. And also, you learn how to pace yourself. And that is when you're doing something extreme, physically, mentally, spiritually, pacing is everything. And at this point, you are 60 wonderful, by the way. This is hopefully one thing that we've learned. This is I just want to read you this, and this is kind of the idea that on the Shikoku that it's written. It's also experienced though on the Camino, just in the culture of kindness. So that is something that I really learned and I really needed after this lots of meanness and mean-spiritedness in our world. So there are 7 gifts needing no wealth. Look upon others with kindness, smile to others when you meet, speak to others with kind words, offer to those offer to others those free services you are capable of offering. Offer your heart to others. Surrender your seat or similar location to those who could better use them, and offer lodging when people need. So this is kind of the tenets of the trek in Japan, but it's practiced. And it's like, be kind. That's it. I needed kindness, so I went to these maybe extremes, some people would think, to be in a community that intentionally practices kindness, which is quite a thing. And I'm trying to keep that with me. And some days it's a challenge. Thanks, Jen.
Great. Great. So it sounded like a very healing experience, both of them, or all
Yes,
3 of your experiences.
absolutely.
Yeah. And someone asks in the chat, what was something that surprised you along the way? And tell us about each trek. What surprised you with each one?
Wow, that's such a great question. I'm still, even though I trained and I was like, really felt strong, all three of these, I was still surprised that I could do it. And I know that sounds maybe strange, but even after doing the first one, I was still surprised I could do it. And also, I was surprised that I was on the second and third times that I could help other people. And that I could be a better listener. So I know those are broad things, but that's really what I took from it, is being quiet and being helpful. Those were big surprises. Culturally, there were some really funny things in Japan, especially just if there's English used, sometimes it's used in really fun ways. There was and interesting things like there's a vending machine with liquor in it by the side of the road where there's nothing but rice paddies. And in Spain, there's beer in vending machines. So just some cultural things that I thought were really, really funny in that way. And you're meeting all kinds of people, and the characters you meet are a surprise because you have no idea who you're going to meet. If you go by yourself, you're going to meet people, and it's amazing.
Can you tell us about a memorable person you met on each trek?
Oh, wow. Okay, there's so many.
First one who comes to mind.
There's so many. Oh gosh. I would say on the first trek, I walked with a lot of people who didn't speak English. Actually, I was the only American in the group that I ended up kind of hanging out with all the time. And what was so lovely about that, and different from what I experienced at home, was that the youngest people were in their 20s and the oldest people were in their 60s. So walking with a multi-aged group of people. So that happened on the first Camino. The Shikoku, the big surprise was how rugged it was. It wouldn't fly in the United States because we have too many lawyers, I think. But there were places where you had to pull yourself on ropes like up the side of a mountain because the trail was so rough. So things like that, just the terrain, and that nobody made a big deal about it. That was very surprising. And that you would see very, very old people working and moving around and walking. And that was a big lesson, that older people were still very, very vital. So besides individuals, that's like something that I took out of that experience. And the last Camino that I did last spring, I walked a lot with women my own age, and that didn't happen the first time. The average age of people walking the Camino de Santiago is 46 to 65. Maybe because we have, some of us are partially retired, or we saved up money, or we just said, screw it, we quit our jobs. I don't know, but that's the average age. So walking with women who are entering into what I call the wise woman phase, and they were from all over the world and really interesting people, and everybody was fierce in their own way. That was a wonderful and unexpected surprise.
Great. Did you want to show some video before we get to the next questions?
Yes, I wanted to show, there's strange things that you're only going to see certain times and in certain places. And one of the things, can you show it from there?
Boots?
Let's show the boots. So in Japan, everybody takes their shoes off before they enter a house or a home or an establishment. And in Spain, you had to take your boots off wherever you were, if you were entering a place to stay. But also, a lot of people's boots fell apart and they became planters and other things along the way. So the boots everywhere was just something you're not going to see every day. And I really got a kick out of it. And those were mine. They started out a different color than the way that they ended. But there are boots, piles of boots. I love all the different languages out in the middle of nowhere. Boots even with a great view on top of a mountain. Very creative uses for boots. And there's a reason why, you keep, usually the boot rack was outside, because you can imagine the lovely aroma of 30 pairs of boots that have been worn for, 5 to 8 hours a day through all kinds of weather. And those are my lovely boots that I left in Spain at the end.
Oh,
Yes.
it seems like you wouldn't have a chance to dry them out with all that.
Okay,
with
you
that
learn
schedule.
hacks. Yeah. Put newspaper inside them and turn them upside down,
Oh,
and
okay.
they will dry. They will dry. And
Great.
someone said, did I have house shoes for inside? No. I would wear clean socks, or in Japan, sometimes they had little slippers for you, depending, well, not in your own tent, but if you were staying at one of the little inns, they would supply you with things like that, which is wonderful.
Okay. Did you want to show nourishment next?
Yeah, I will show nourishment, and this is in Spain.
Okay.
Yeah, people say, well, how did you eat? How did you? So, nourishment in Spain. Very
And
simple.
these videos have sound, but it's just not working for us.
Yeah, so this one has food, glorious food was the soundtrack for this. In a monastery, there's a lot of communal preparing, and then there's some little spots that have crazy desserts. You really can experience everything. Best gazpacho in the supermarket, in the middle of like fields. Someone set up in containers, one of the shipping containers, a coffee place. But these are typical things. On top of a mountain, someone has a donation only place where you can. Yeah, I still remember that watermelon. Absolutely amazing. And Spain has good sweets as well. But typically, lots of eggs, lots of coffee, always carrying dried fruits and things, so that you're not getting hungry. The cherries were ready when I was walking through. And there's lots of wineries and places like that. Great bread, cheese, tomatoes. And that's pretty much was a big part of what I ate every day. Just some of the things. And different regions have things like goat cheese and sheep cheese. And that Aquarius is their version of Gatorade. Good coffee, good ciders. And pizza was not my favorite. They also eat octopus, which after seeing my octopus teacher, I will never eat again. And they have some different kinds of seafood. But just very, it's great to experience whatever you can, wherever you can. I believe a full sensory experience adds layers of things. Churros are off the hook if you're a churro fan. So that's some of the nourishment.
You're making us hungry here.
Yeah, so good. So good. But really preparing meals, breaking bread with people was a daily thing on the Camino. And it was a really special thing. Because you had people from all different countries, and I introduced someone from Korea to gazpacho. They had never had any. So there you go. They're really fun.
So, great. Well, we had some other comments, questions in the chat. I think, did anyone want to ask Rachel a question on video?
That's being shy.
Don't be shy.
That's okay. I know some of these folks, and they are not shy in person.
Oh, my friend Sharon is here,
Okay.
your fellow artist, Sharon.
All right.
Auntie Africa. Do you know Sharon?
I don't think I do. I need to know her if I don't know her.
Maybe she has a question. I don't know.
Yes.
Where did she go?
Oh, I see her. Hi.
Okay.
No, I don't have a question. I'm just fascinated.
Comment.
This is wonderful, Rachel. I don't think we've met, but
Oh.
I mean, just what you've done. And I think the other woman said the bravery, the courage, is just phenomenal. And I'm inspired. So
Yay!
I'm inspired. So thank you. But I don't have a question.
Okay. I just want to
Okay,
tell folks,
good to
you
see
know,
you, Sharon.
yes, and I hope to meet you in person sometime
Yeah,
soon.
really,
Yeah.
this year is that year. I'll see people in person.
Someone says that they tried octopus in Japan and it was like chewing on rubber. I hear that.
Oh,
Oh, and
okay.
Carlo says thank you, thank you. So I want to acknowledge that I am our country right now our soil is not at war. I was able to save up money to go on these adventures. I have a great spouse who understands that I need to do this. My family, the rest of my family got used to it. My friends, most of them are still my friends, but it is from a privileged position that I am able to do these treks. It was by choice. I wasn't forced to walk 500 miles. People are forced to do that. So I acknowledge the history of why people have been forced to walk and that I chose to walk is a very different thing. And yes, for me, a middle class person living in Montgomery County, Maryland, it did feel brave and it is a challenge. And I hope to do another one, different route next spring. So I appreciate your comments. Yeah, for me, it feels brave, but I also feel like I'm not the bravest one out there. For sure.
Great. Well, yeah, that's great. What about did you want to show creatures? How about that video?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Let's show
Let
creatures.
me share
Yes.
screen.
There we go. And this is, I got better at making films when this last Camino. So I don't have a movie of Japan, but here we go. Creatures. Here we go. On the daily, you are communing with cows and horses, and the cows and horses, and when it's moist, the snails, the cows and horses and sheep that live in the Basque area are really hardy. Not that one. Goats. So for, an urban person, and African storks, they roost in Spain along the Camino, which is amazing. So every day you're seeing all kinds of animals, and I loved that about the Camino and in Japan as well. These giant storks are everywhere. This is some kind of pheasant. That was part of this, hung out at some cafe. Horses. How often do we see these kinds of animals in our everyday life? So they really made it special. And to be, I guess, quiet and not and non-threatening enough to have encounters with animals was also great. Lots of cats. And I love that they're just kind of hanging out. Big slugs. If you're not a fan of slugs, might not be your thing. Every morning, if you didn't have an alarm, you had one. There's always chickens around and very large dogs to pet. Yeah, I got my dog. I missed my dog at home. Sometimes traffic jam is because cows are walking down the street. Actually, often. And I don't know what breed these are, but they're really
I
beautiful.
think they're used to being on camera.
Probably, but they're just, they're lovely.
So sweet.
Yes, everyday encounters with animals. Lots of chickens. And this was what they call in Finisterre, which if you keep walking, you hit the sea. And that's when I got home with my animal.
Oh.
She still recognized me, so I
She
was
was
happy.
so happy you came
Yeah.
back.
Yes.
Great. And then you just had one more video if you want to. Should we show that one too?
Sure.
Mountains called
Mountains. And after after being locked down, homebound, figuring out how to have an income from home as a person in the arts, there was something so liberating just to have some mountain time. Yes, and Jan says, yes, cows are seen as sacred. Oh, someone wants to know about breaking my arm. Okay, I'll get to that after the mountains.
Yeah, we still have time for more.
I know. But walking in this, there were not people around, maybe one or two, but to be present outdoors in this kind of environment was such a gift. And it rained a lot. My hair was wet a lot. I'm in the clouds. But to be outside in all kinds of weather and not to be afraid to be outside in the weather. If you have the right clothing, if you got your layers, it really is wonderful, and you're going to experience different kinds of things. I guess it was cold that day. They're my trekking poles. But what of you to be up that high? Oh yeah, I remember this day when there's sideways wind and rain. But again, you're in the clouds, and so beautiful. So beautiful to be there. Yeah, how often do we get to be
In the clouds?
In the clouds, literally in the clouds. I don't know why that dude was wearing shorts, but he was hardy.
Showing off.
Yes. And you can see these little signs, the Camino, you see them everywhere. And just really, it was stunning. I couldn't get enough of these kinds of views. And if you know that song Rise Up, that's what was playing. But
right.
Coming out of pandemic, coming out of being not being able to travel safely, to be in an area like that and to be present was just an incredible gift. So somebody asked me about breaking my arm. I have to tell you, after walking almost like 400 some miles, doing the heart suture every day, sleeping in tents, just I was so blissed out that it was like, oh, okay. I've never been that not anxious in my life when something happened. I went out to the road, I flagged down someone, I went, it was the mailman for a town. He drove me to the local clinic. They called the local English teacher, took me to a bigger clinic, and I got home. It took me a few days to get home, but I was very cared for. And at that point, I think that's the only time I've really had radical acceptance in my life. But it really, truly was like, okay, I guess it's time to go home. And this is what happened, and everything's cool. The wrist is working.
Right.
Yeah, and it was just I used their traditional stick that you walk with on the Shikoku is a wooden stick, and that's different than my two trekking poles. And a mossy, rocky forest path and a wooden stick are not a good combination. So when I return to Japan, I'm going to forgo the traditional stick and take my trekking poles.
Oh, the trekking poles are more
Yeah,
stable
two.
then.
Yes, and this was one slippery wooden stick. So
Oh,
yes,
right.
but a huge but a huge lesson in asking for help. A huge lesson. How could you not ask for help if something happened, and just going with it? So that was really amazing.
How was the medical facilities along the way on both places? And did you get sick or have any other medical needs along the way, or encounter people who did?
A lot of people had blisters and a lot of foot problems. Their boots they didn't get boots or shoes that were bigger. They didn't break them in. That was there's so much advice to tell you what to do, and a lot of people that ignored that had a hard time, and some people who didn't ignore that had a hard time as well. But that really that really affected people. Some people had to go home that I met at the beginning who I really liked because they just didn't have the right gear and they hadn't tested it out. So, yeah.
And is there something you would do differently aside from bringing trekking poles?
I think I would bring less stuff. I've been thinking about it. Like, what can I leave out when I return? Hopefully, I'm going to plan for it anyway. It's good to make these plans, even if you have to cancel them. Yeah, I think I'm going to bring less stuff. And each time it's for different reasons. I feel like, all these, a lot of mythology and a lot of literature, a lot of stories that are about quests are in every society, but it's usually a man, and he's usually young, right, when he goes on these quests. So we need to flip that script, girls. I'm telling you, and gentlemen, if you are older, if you're tuned in. So that's kind of in my mind. Okay, this is my quest, but maybe the first Camino was the first layer, the Shikoku was the second layer, last year's Camino was another layer, and I think next spring I'll be doing the Crone Camino. That's and maybe become a little wise and maybe listen more and learn more.
What is the Crone Camino?
Well, for me, that's entering into 1 foot in becoming an elder or an older person. A lot of my friends are retiring now. I'm not, because I'm an artist, so that's never going to happen. But
Right.
yeah, that's fine. But really entering into, I'm 60, I'm not going to live to be 120, I'm pretty sure. So I'm really in kind of the last quarter of my life right now on planet Earth. So what am I going to do with that? What does that mean in this chunk of life? And we don't have, we have some guidance for that, but I think that's something we need to make for ourselves and figure out as well. So this, when I have, you have a month to walk and think about things, it really helps to take that time to allow yourself to think and decide.
Someone asks, what is your early sacred background or religious upbringing? And I would add to that, how did it change, if at all?
That's a really good question. So my family is Reformed Eastern European Jews. And I think for me, it was always more about the food and the get-togethers. But I didn't have a spiritual experience within the structure of that religion. It was more like identity and family and culture and matzo ball soup and fun stuff like that. So putting myself in other arenas for spiritual beliefs, I see the commonality, and I think it comes in the community and in the being quiet and in being present. And for me, it also comes with being outdoors a lot, so, being in nature. So, I still, I hosted Passover for 17 people this year. So that part is still important to me. But I feel like to have an inclusive spirituality is what is working for me. And if there isn't a rite of passage in the confines of the spiritual system you grew up with, make your own. I encourage everybody to do that. Make your own.
Okay, great. And someone asks, did you read Joyce Rupp's book about walking the Camino with her friend? And I would also ask, do you plan on writing a book about your experience?
People have asked me that. This is as formal of a presentation as I've done so far about these experiences. Someone said maybe a podcast about women who walk. Who knows? Shoot me an email. Let's talk.
Yeah, you should start a podcast. I think it would be
Yes,
popular.
that would be fun.
Well, any final questions for Rachel? I see people lighting up their screens and
Come on,
walking.
Rachel, how do we get in touch with you? How do we get in touch with you?
Oh, great question. And I also want to say I'm happy to mentor people about walking, about doing the Camino, about doing the Shikoku. People mentored me, and it was invaluable information. So my email is, and maybe someone can write it in the chats because I'm not
I'll
technically
put it in
savvy.
the chat.
Okay, so it's one word, hello planet Rachel, Rachel Rachel at gmail.com. So I'm happy to talk to folks about walking. And when I start training for reels for the next one, which will probably be in February of next year, if you're up for 10 miles, let me know.
And I believe your website's Hello Planet Rachel too, right?
Yes,
.com.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank
Go
you.
check out Rachel's beautiful work there, and just to echo some of the comments in the chat, you're so inspirational, adventurous, and just amazing. You've inspired us all, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around how can I do it with my ability, which is not as much, but I always wanted to maybe try it, but I don't know. I don't know if that will be something I'm able to check off my own bucket list. Of course, it would require a lot of training.
Yeah, and a lot of people just do a little section or a little section one year, another little section. And, you know, Camino means the way. So whatever is the way or the path that's going to get you into the next phase or into improving your art or your whatever it is that you're striving towards. Everyone's Camino is different. It might mean changing a career. It might mean downsizing. It might mean getting more exercise. It might mean cutting out red meat. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. But the
Yeah.
Camino doesn't have to be the Camino de Santiago. Your spiritual trek doesn't have to be the Shikoku. It can be that you made a decision and you're working towards it. And every day you're taking a step towards it. Paso, paso, step by step, step by step.
Paso, step by step.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're
Cieno
planning
Canal.
another, tell us what your next Camino is.
So actually with people I've walked with on both Caminos, there's a northern route that hugs more, it's more in the Basque country, and it is more along the coast before you drop down to Santiago. So that is, oh, thank you, Jan. That is, yeah, so that's in the infancy stage for next year. I think that as soon as you start thinking about it is when actually the planning starts. You know, the Camino starts as soon as you get the idea that you want to do it.
Great. Well, that seed has been planted and it's growing strong. I can see. So thank you so much, Rachel. And we will have this recording on SSTCI's YouTube page.
Yay.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us, and keep us posted if you do one of these walks in Spain or in Japan. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you again, Rachel.
Yeah, and thank you, Lisa, so much for having all these cultural programs and including me in this one. It's been awesome.
Thanks. It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Everyone have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Sayonara.
Okay, ciao. Sayonara.